This is one of the most badass female characters in shonen of all time. Kugisaki Nobara has a violent fighting style, is extremely expressive with her emotions, and awesomely demonstrates that as a girl you can be both beautiful and strong at the same time. As the only female first year in a team with 2 guys, it's anything but a surprise that many people have compared Kugisaki with the character that she admittedly shares quite a lot of these characteristics with, Sakura from Naruto. However, while Sakura in many ways failed to become the strong female role model that many wanted her to be, with Nobara, Akutami managed to create an awesome female character that firmly stands side by side with Itadori and Megumi, is incredibly strong-willed, and is not merely reduced to being a love interest, but in contrary, is probably the most hard-boiled member of the trio. In other words, Kugisaki is what Sakura was supposed to be, a strong female character that stands on equal ground with the 2 male leads. This is accentuated by the fact that Kugisaki, just like Gojo, is extremely self-centered and power-oriented, and she also actually shares a quite similar character arc to her sensei as well. So what exactly is Nobara's role in the story? How strong is she really? Why do Maki and Mai have such an impact on her? And what is her major flaw as a character? This is the story of Kugisaki Nobara.
当たれば勝ちの術式強いなお前でも残念私との相性最悪だよスレーチ法友なり
Kugisaki, despite being part of the main trio in the story, has not really been assigned a proper purpose in the story yet. Something that Akutami does surprisingly often with characters he introduces. In many cases, their role in the story only becomes clear much later, or in some cases, in true Togashi fashion, the character simply remains a malleable wildcard. Now, since this is an anime-only analysis, I won't give any examples, but the manga readers amongst you will know who I talk about. Long story short, Nobara's role in Jujutsu Kaisen, both in the manga and the anime, is quite unclear. She has escaped the pitiful fate of being a mere love interest to the main character, and since Fushiguro and Itadori have an unusually positive relationship, also doesn't have to play the role of moderator.
No fighting. Oi! No fighting. No fucking fighting. No fighting. No fucking fighting! Good.
She's not someone with a grand goal that we can follow like Maki, or someone driven by intense emotions like Yuji or Megumi. In other words, Akutami still keeps Kugisaki's deeper role in the story hidden, that as a part of the main trio, she will without any doubt get at some point, while at the same time giving her an absolutely fantastic character arc and more moments in the story to shine. So first, you know what's up, let's take a closer look at her character arc and her powers.
男がどうとか女がどうとか知ったこっちゃねえんだよてめえらだけで勝手にやってろ私は釘崎野原なんだよ
I would argue that Kugisaki, just like Fushiguro, is actually already plenty strong even in the beginning of the story. And just like Fushiguro and Itadori, Nobara has also a very interesting relation with death. Itadori is scared of death, but is more than prepared to die to save someone else. Fushiguro generally seems to be too eager to sacrifice himself whenever he gets the chance. And Nobara definitely doesn't want to die either, but also isn't particularly scared of death.
お前顔覚えたからな
Basically, she doesn't mind injuring herself or even dying as long as she can pay her opponent back for it enough. And very fittingly, I feel, her curse technique allows her to use nails and a straw doll to attack the opponent from the distance, inflicting pain and damage. She can also shoot the nails from a distance and thus influence the environment around her as well. Now, as a very self-righteous person, Nobara doesn't like it when good people get hurt, just like Yuji, same as Megumi. But when she sees herself in the right, she has absolutely no problem at all punishing who she thinks is a bad person. Now, the very first thing that becomes very obvious to anyone who encounters Nobara for the very first time is her incredibly strong and straightforward personality. Quite in the manner of many male shonen characters, she wears her feelings and thoughts right there on her sleeve. When she's pissed, she says so.
私、お腹減ると機嫌悪いの知ってた。
When she thinks something's cute, she says so. And when she's grateful, she says so as well.
も感謝してる。
This straightforwardness is both a strength and a weakness, and the best scene to illustrate this central trait of a character is this one right here. You see, the irony here is not only that Nobara has an attack called sympathy, where she inflicts pain on herself and her opponent, it's that she has close to no sympathy or empathy in the first place, which in a pretty messed up way is absolutely hilarious when you think about it.
It's ironic.
Now, while both Itadori and Megumi suffer heavily under the deep feelings of empathy that they feel for others, it's the girl of the group that suffers from not having enough of it. What a nice twist. To spell it out really quickly here, basically whenever Kugisaki ends up in a situation that requires her to understand and relate to the feelings of another person, she wildly and often violently rejects them.
私たちが当然のように享受している環境を手にするのに。
うるせえよ。
To understand why that is, let's look at how Nobara approaches the central moral question of the story. What makes a good life worth living? While both Itadori and Fushiguro make this about others, Kugisaki, much like Gojo, makes it mostly about herself. For her, living a good life means being able to express herself freely, do what she likes, and spend time with the few people she sees as worthy. Now, as always, I'm not necessarily saying that one is better or more appropriate than the other. Jujutsu Kaisen kind of makes it a point that most of these characters have valid and understandable approaches to life, and for Nobara, escaping the village she grew up in and moving to Tokyo ended up being her big goal, which was the reason she became a sorcerer in the first place.
お前なんで呪術高専来たんだよ。
田舎が嫌で東京に住みたかったから。
Thus, other than Yuji or Megumi, she has already reached her goal, and as a result, her desire has now shifted from getting to Tokyo to preserving the life she has wished for and has now gained. And the way she approaches it is pretty much the same as Gojo. Strength. When you're strong, you can shape the world around you, do what you want, and keep those safe that matter. Nobara thus constantly balances two personas, her girly feminine side that is incredibly important to her, as well as being a strong sorcerer and woman. This is wonderfully symbolized, I think, by her weapon, a hammer with a pink heart on it. Now, this duality of her character, that I personally find incredibly cool and well executed, is explored in great detail during her fight with Momo. Momo holds the position that women in the Jujutsu world have to be perfect in order to have a place in society. Perfect, of course, in the most conservative and rigid sense of the term.
呪術師が実力主義だと思ってない。完璧なの。
Now, I think you'll agree that Kugisaki standing up against this idea is a very important and impressive move. Yes, women can be both strong and beautiful, and you shouldn't let your life be determined by what society says. Life isn't a job, and you should be able to be who you are. Now, the thing that Nobara doesn't consider, however, is why Momo thinks so in the first place. Momo has experienced all the unfairness and harsh expectations that her and the women around her have faced in the Jujutsu society. She didn't come up with that view by herself. It's the conclusion she has drawn personally from all the suffering and struggle associated with being a female sorcerer. But Nobara doesn't get that. No, not only doesn't she get it, she doesn't want to get it. When Momo tries to explain her thoughts, this is her actual reaction to that.
私たちが当然のように享受している環境を手にするのに。
うるせえよ。
Not having any empathy is the major flaw of her character. Just like Gojo, Kugisaki is extremely convinced of herself and her worldview. While most other characters like Itadori or Nanami, for instance, don't have a lot of self-worth and are constantly doubtful about their own actions and decisions, she sees herself as 100% righteous and 100% correct. And I think that that is extremely toxic, because we know that Nobara hates nothing more than people being judgy and full of prejudice, as happened with her childhood friend Saori. And yet there is almost no other character in Jujutsu Kaisen that is as close-minded as her. The first time we meet her, the very first thing she does is impose herself on a modeling recruiter.
私は
Which is especially funny because they are seen as pretty creepy and pushy themselves in Tokyo. So Nobara immediately leaves a strong impression by creeping out the creep, establishing her power and presence. Then she proceeds to judge both Megumi and Yuji within the very first 10 seconds of meeting them.
見るからに芋臭い。名前だけって。
And she does so with everyone. And that's really sad, because even though she really wants to understand people, she doesn't want to actually listen to what people have to say and learn who they actually are. And so this becomes especially clear in her relationship with Maki and Mai. Just like us viewers, the first impression Nobara gets is that Maki is cool, confident and reliable, while Mai seems to be cold, manipulative, and hateful. In her own view, Maki is the good twin and Mai is the evil twin. Kugisaki respects Maki for her appearance as a strong woman and takes her as a role model. Mai, meanwhile, is evil for taunting her sister for not having any powers.
マキさんの方が100倍美人。寝不足か？毛穴開いてんぞ。
And once again, she thinks she's absolutely in the right because she's defending her friend Maki that she likes against a person that she dislikes. And so once again, she fails to understand that both Maki and Mai are their own individual people with their own individual problems. Mai never wanted to become a sorcerer in the first place, but simply wanted to have her sister, the only real family she ever had, by her side. And that sister left her behind to defy their family. As we learn, Mai simply wants attention from Maki. Now, don't get me wrong, Maki of course has her own struggles and chose her own path. But in the end, she was the one who hurt Mai, not the other way around.
置いてかないでよ。当たり前だ。嘘つき。
And someone else tries to explain it to Nobara, but she tells Momo to shut up.
うるせえよ。
And so, in the end, while she's in the right when it comes to being a woman and thus wins against Momo, she fails to emphasize with Mai and ultimately loses the battle.
よかった。
Why is she that way? Now, even in the manga, we know surprisingly little about Nobara's past and how she grew up. We do know, however, that she always had a tendency to close herself off to others, no doubt to shield herself. When I say that Nobara doesn't feel empathy, I don't mean that she can't, but that she actively won't, since it makes her vulnerable. I think she's very well aware of her own emotions, and at her core, Nobara, just like Gojo, really cares. So much, in fact, that in the world of Jujutsu, where friends can be killed any moment, she tries to protect herself from experiencing that same pain. To prove that point, consider the time that we saw how she reacted to Saori leaving town, almost as if she had passed away.
沙織ちゃんを追い出した。あの村にいたら、私は。
The twist on her relationship with Saori was basically that this was just a normal girl that Nobara had a close relationship with, and thus put her up on a pedestal. And similarly, we also know that both her and Megumi were actually deeply hurt by Itadori apparently passing away as well.
死んで泣きわめくほどちょろい女じゃないのよ。
So, in the end, her egocentric and unempathetic approach to life aren't that surprising. What Nobara needs to learn then is to let her barriers down and just be more open around other people, listening to what they have to say and trusting that they're not going to stomp all over her feelings. She can remain a strong, independent woman while at the same time forming real relationships. And you can already see this happening as well. Compare how Nobara acts in her first mission with Yuji, where she tries to do a solo run,
真面目に行こうぜ。
最近までパンピーだったやつに言われたくないわよ。
with the Cursed Womb arc, where she absolutely seamlessly fights in tandem with Itadori. character development. This is just an absolutely exciting and fun female character, and I can't wait to see what role she will be playing in the future of the story. Now, while Kugisaki is defined by speaking her mind, this guy here is known for speaking his favorite onigiri ingredients. And yet he's one of the most interesting and popular characters in the story, with one of the most fascinating powers. So make sure to watch Inumaki's video by clicking right here. Thanks for watching, peace.